Hello and welcome back to the Espresso Insiders Podcast. Today I'm joined by Bob Payne. Welcome, Bob. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Boo. Good to see you.
And you. Thanks for joining. Appreciate you being on the show. Hopefully you can see me and hear me okay. What would be great is if we could jump into a little bit about sort of your background and your sort of early career, and then how you've built up to kind of being a coffee shop owner and then exiting, etc. And kind of the a brief life story would be great if that's okay.
Right, yeah. Well, let's start off a little bit about the background. I'm a geography graduate from Birmingham University. I came out of university and had a brief period as a teacher, actually around here in Aylesbury Grammar School. Fantastic time, loved it. But realised as a teacher, you do get older, and therefore, as a result, you have maybe less connection with kids as you do when you were when I was there in my 20s,
Yeah.
and so therefore I decided to go into sort of commercial world, and I've worked ever since in financial services, specifically actually in the insurance industry. And I've worked both in the UK and more latterly internationally. I've got, don't not say I'm proud of this, but I've got 2 million British air miles. I've traveled most of the world with my job, which is fantastic. I gave up corporate life about 7 years ago. When I was 60, I decided I wanted to run my own business. So I set myself up as a business consultant and as a mentor. And one of my clients, as you can see behind you, is the Association of International Life Offices, where I'm a contracted CEO. And that keeps me in touch with everything that's going on in the international insurance space nowadays. So that's my career. And as you can see, I've never mentioned the word coffee or cafe at all in that. So very happy to tell you now, Luke, how the hell did I get involved in a coffee shop?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like we're kind of at the beginning of a Financial Times podcast or something like that, which is probably something that we both have a bit more experience in, really. But yeah, how did the kind of opportunity to sort of own and run a coffee shop come about? And I think what would be really interesting is if we could jump into that and then a little bit more around sort of your perspective on it, but also just some of the small things that I think loads of people, maybe when they've built a bit of a career up, they think, oh, owning a coffee shop one day will be a great lifestyle choice. It'll be, I love going to nice coffee shops. I'm sure owning one would be just as good. So, what would be some of the things that you've learned from that experience, owning a cafe?
Oh, sure. I mean, first of all, how did I get involved?
Hmm.
I have a dog. I walk a dog, and I tend to walk it from my little village, which is just outside, I suppose, a little town called Wendover. And we always used to go into a cafe called Whitewaters. And we were a customer there for many, many years. Knew a lot of people from the customer because I'm that sort of person. I talk to people. And actually, my wife knew the owner. And my daughter, my middle daughter, she worked in there for a summer job. And there just came an opportunity where the owner decided that they wanted to sell it, and just asked completely out of the blue, would we be interested? So my wife at the time, she's a part-time HR consultant. She's always been in HR. And actually, my son had just graduated in biochemistry from the University College London. And he actually didn't really have an idea what he wanted to do. It was a very academic degree, and we thought it would be a great idea. And he was interested in coffee and everything for him to run with my wife, with me being the sort of financier at the back, Whitewaters. So away we went. We agreed a price. Seemed to be quite a good price, and with no small business cafe coffee experience, away we went. So a huge risk, but one we were prepared to do. And it's amazing what Google can do for you, Luke. I tell you that for nothing. So let me give you my perspective on it. First of all, it is time consuming. All right, that's the first thing you need to be very, very aware of. To be honest with you, if you decide I'm going to own a coffee shop and then I'm going to give it to a manager to run, fair enough. But actually, I think you'll find that's quite difficult. It does require commitment on your part. I remember our dinner table chat used to be about the cafe and coffee. That was it. In fact, my elder daughter, who's a hospital doctor at Stoke Mandeville, was getting fairly frustrated by this because that's all we talked about. It is all consuming, I would say. So ideally, you need to work in itself. As I said, we had the Folk family involved. Customers are really, really important, and we were lucky. We had a pretty loyal customer base, and we managed to keep a loyal customer base and grow that customer base. And to me, it's great having passers-by, and we used to have a lot of them who were, either walking in the Chilterns or they were cycling, which was great. But actually, your loyal customer base is the thing you need to be very, very aware of. How do you get a loyal customer base? Well, first of all, your staff. Your staff are unbelievably important. We used to, my wife used to work for the Body Shop, and Anita Roddick, who used to own the Body Shop, used to say, actually, I'm only interested in people's attitude, because I can easily train people about knowledge, but you can't train attitude. And that stuck with me for a lot of time. So we looked at getting really good people, and then we could train them. We can train them how to make food. We can train them how to make coffee, but you can't train their good attitude. So that's what we got. We got a great base of people around us, both experienced and young people, and it was really good. It was really enjoyable, tough, but really, really enjoyable. So so that's great, and you build up a good business, which we did over about 4-year period, I think. And then we were lucky again, just before COVID, my son decided he wanted should sound horrible. He wanted a proper job. Therefore, he went off into the city and had a proper job, and we didn't really want to continue running it as a result of that. So we looked for the right buyer at the right price, and actually we had a number of people interested, but we didn't feel they were the right people. And actually, the people we went with, it's always a bit of thing. They seem to be very keen on it. They seem to want to involve in it. Things have changed now, but they seem to be keen on it. So we struck a fair deal with them. Usually the formula, Luke, I don't know whether you know, is usually annual net profit, multiplied by 1.5 or 2.5 times. You can usually get 2.5 times if you're only running a 5-day-a-week cafe. But if you've got it open 7 days a week, obviously that's a lot more work to get your annual net profit. Mm-hmm. So that gives you your value, really, and there you start from there, and that's what we did. And then COVID hit, and actually I think the new owners got benefit from COVID because they got a more outside seating, they got grants, etc., which we never got. But thoroughly enjoyed my time there. Great experience, and would I do it again? I'd think about it.
Very diplomatic answer, Bob. Yeah, it's a really interesting kind of way to go into it. I think something that, it sounds like it kind of came more out of the blue than anything else, really. And I suppose you weren't necessarily looking to get into, coffee as an industry and had a massive background in it, or what have you, or had worked in food and drink before, anything like that. It was just kind of an opportunity that came up, and it sounded very much like a family business opportunity as well, something that is and once one dropped out, you thought, well, this isn't for us anymore, we'll move on and do something else, which makes a lot of sense, based on how you got into it in the first place. So how did you, when you mentioned about you kind of wanted, you were able to maintain quite a loyal customer base, how did you manage with staff as well? Was there any staff that you were able to retain over, or did you kind of go and look for new staff as well, or was it a bit of a mix of the two when you took on the business?
This is a very fine balance. I mean, if you ask me to just think of two things that are really important in running a cafe, one is wages, and I'll come back to that, which is staff.
Mm-hmm.
And the second is waste, and we can talk about that later if you want. But let's talk about wages. I mean, when it comes to the summer or Easter, you have plenty of staff. By the way, you know, we used to get people coming in all the time saying, "Can I have a summer job? Can I have a summer job? Can I have a summer job?" So that's not a problem. Your problem is when the students have gone back, or the school kids have gone back, and actually you need to run your cafe. That's why sometimes it's really valuable having family members who can work. You know, so I've worked in it, my wife worked in it, and my son has worked in it. So we had three of us straight away if we wanted to. Not that I wanted to do it full time, but you know, I could step in
Here and there, and yeah, okay.
So one of the first thing I would say is you get yourself two or three people that see it as their job. You know, it's not a summer job; it's their job, and they therefore you put into the rota on a pretty regular basis. Not, you know, they might be part time, but some of them will be full time. Probably in the size of our cafe, we had one full time person, which we sort of labelled the manager, and then we had a number of part-time adults, and then we would supplement that with Saturday, Sunday, you know, kids that wanted to work in it, and that worked really, really well. So one of the problems you've got is obviously you want to give people enough work that they want to stay. Yeah. So you can't just give somebody an hour here and an hour there. You know, you've got to give them something. So it is a bit of a balance when you're starting to bring in summer, you know, the summer holidays. You know, good news is most of our long-term full staff wanted to go on holiday. So it was easy to get them to go on holiday then, and then we could backfill it with summer staff. So yeah, I mean, it's like everything. I mean, we were lucky. You know, my wife she's in HR, so therefore she was very good at doing the interviewing and, you know, keeping staff happy, etc. Which she passed a lot of that on to my son, who was running it on a sort of day-to-day basis. Yeah, staff pretty key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Second thing, as I said, is waste. You know, that's one of your problems. You know, when you're running a cafe, you know, not so much coffee. And coffee, you would hope you're getting the right size bags that actually you keep everything fresh. But that's really important. And I'll come to coffee because I know this is a coffee blog we're talking about.
Yeah.
But waste is really, really important in a cafe. You know, the more you throw away, obviously, the more you're throwing money down the drain. So it's again a balance between having enough food and drink, which is fresh, in the cafe, so you don't have to throw it away, but you also don't want to run out either. So it's a real balancing act. Coffee is a good one. You know, one of the things I do know about good coffee is you got to get a very good coffee bean. So we use, and I'm not plugging anybody, we use Monmouth coffee, which is first class. We've got every time for Monmouth coffee. We never changed it. We never tried to put anything else in. We kept Monmouth coffee. And actually, a lot of our customers said that's the reason we come in, because it's good quality coffee. So the first thing I would say, have good quality coffee, and don't skimp by getting poor coffee, because that is just a disaster. Yeah. So you've got to work with good coffee beans. So there we go. Another great thing about Monmouth, and actually I'm sure other good, coffee roasteries, they will come and train you. So they will come on a regular basis to train our, baristas to make good coffee. And you've done it a lot, Luke. And it is difficult. It's not just about putting lovely flowers and ferns on the top of a latte. It's also about actually ensuring your equipment is clean, it's cleaned out. And actually, more importantly, the coffee is ground well and it's used properly. I've been to so many places where they don't clean their machine, so it tastes really bitter. You know, bitter coffee is horrible. you know.
Yeah, and you put all the effort into getting high quality beans to begin with, and like you say, especially you're getting coffee from a roastery like Monmouth, and there's loads of others out there, etc. But you kind of think the least you can do is keep your equipment clean and make it, because all you really want, you want to preserve as much of that flavor from the bean, grind it nicely, have a consistent cup. That's all you're really looking for. Do as little to it as possible. Fresh ingredients, make it as consistent as you can. And I think, yeah, like you say, if you're not even bothering to kind of clean your equipment in between shots, it's kind of like, well, how exactly can you expect to run a successful business, you know?
A very busy cafe, you can slip there, and actually all it needs to take is one or two poor coffees, and you start to lose your loyal client base, as I told you, which is so important.
Mhm.
So that's where, making sure you've got enough, your coffee machine is big enough. I think we started with quite a small coffee machine and realized we had to grow it. So have, two alongside each other, or a much bigger machine that is capable of churning out more good quality coffees than obviously a smaller machine. It's not rocket science. We also rented, by the way, rather than bought. We had originally we bought the coffee machine that we had, but actually we realized that it's much easier to rent it. You can change it quickly, you get better service, and so forth. So my, again, advice for anyone taking it: rent your machine.
Okay, that's something that is a definitely, I think, for the owner's side, is something that might not think of. You might think it's a bit counterintuitive. You might want to own all of your, like from a finance perspective, you might think, oh, actually, is it more expensive to rent, etc., etc. But I guess the level of service that you get with that, and upkeep and kind of education, particularly for people that are kind of newer in, baristas that haven't used it before, etc., and can be taught, that might be better than doing it kind of in-house and having one guy and say, this is how we use this machine, etc., etc., and paying for all the maintenance and everything else along the way, is a bit more tricky.
A lot of things depend on how much capital you've got. So if you want to buy, everything, which you usually do when you have buy a coffee, you will buy the crockery and cutlery and etc., and probably the furnishings, etc. Yeah, that's why we had a coffee, because they had bought theirs, but it was old, and therefore it was breaking down, and therefore we had to get an expensive contract in place. Interestingly, if you rent, the contract's not quite, and the servicing is a lot quicker. So for
Really?
us, the right thing to do was to rent, and we were growing as well, so we wanted bigger machines and everything. Now, if we were still doing it, maybe you would have your own machine, which then you'd look at what's the return on investment. So you'd look at how many cups of coffee am I going to have to make, until I pay for this machine. Because it's not going in my pocket; it's going into the pocket of the person who I bought the machine off of. So yeah, it's as I said, financial services is actually quite good, because you need to be quite good with your numbers.
Yeah,
Coffee.
especially in something where I think, like I say, a lot of people might go into kind of buying a coffee shop and they think, yeah, it's a really good lifestyle. I love the smell of coffee in the morning, so therefore, but let me tell you, having worked behind the bar, you soon get sick of that, and you kind of think, actually, this is all about the numbers, really, like any business, but particularly something like that where it's not, it's quite tactile. You're going in, you're serving customers. You think it's all about customer service, etc., which that is all a big part of it. But ultimately, it's about consistency, and you've got to make a margin on every cup, and it is a bit more hard nosed than I think a lot of people might think. So I guess off the back of that, Bob, I mean, is there anything? If there's one piece of advice or maybe one little tidbit of information that you'd give like a customer that you think actually, you don't really appreciate that this is how you run a coffee shop, or this is what makes things, run smoothly in a coffee shop. Would there be anything that you think actually the customer really doesn't understand that and they maybe should appreciate it a bit more? Because I think the old adage, the customer's always right. I'm not always quite so sure about that.
And my view is that the customer sees the swan, nice, beautiful bird, gliding across the lake. Underneath, the legs are going like billy-o to keep it like it is, and unfortunately, the customer is always right, usually, and therefore anything that's going on in a coffee shop, they don't care. All they're interested in is that when I rock up, I get a lovely cup of coffee and I get my scrambled egg and avocado, whatever I'm asking for. So, you know, what should a customer know? A customer should know actually there's a bloody lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes to get you that good quality coffee and that nice fresh avocado and scrambled egg. That's what they need to realize, and to be honest with you, I think most sensible adults will understand that actually a local independent business, and I think this is quite important, a local independent business that's run by people that they see day in, day out, appreciate that actually they're trying to do a good job and they're trying to do, make a living in ever increasing price world being squeezed. Unlike if you go to a Costa, all due respect, or a Starbucks, you're probably going to get consistency, don't get me wrong, but you ain't going to see the same barista day in, day out, and you're certainly not going to get, really friendly with the manager probably. I'm not doing a disservice there to Costa or Starbucks. It's just the way it is. They run a huge commercial business and they're very successful. When you're an independent coffee owner, it's you and it's all about you and your staff, as I keep saying. So that's what I think. I think it's the legs that are going bloody hard underneath the shop front, the coffee that makes the difference.
It's a really good analogy as well, because I think, especially in somewhere small like that, you're not big enough to have industrial scale processes and, like a McDonald's or something where everything's on the wall and you see exactly how to make the burger and all the rest of it. It's kind of like you're relying on, that person that's making your coffee, they've not been out for a drink the night before, they know what they're doing, they're, sharp and they're focused, and, there's all those sort of things that go into it. And yeah, I think, it's a good point, because it's not necessarily always just one thing. It's that just appreciate these are people, they're local community, they're trying to earn a living, they're trying to give you the best experience possible. And maybe
I think
if they get something wrong, being a bit kind of, don't worry about it too much. I think, I know that customers can be demanding and that's fine, but yeah, bit of sympathy where it's due sometimes is never a bad thing.
as I said, you're loyal. See, that's where you're saying if you're building up a loyal customer base, they understand.
Yeah,
They
you don't
understand
have to keep going on
everything
them.
is, not everything is perfect, and they'll come back.
Mm.
If you have a one-off person that has a terrible experience, then they're unlikely to come back.
Yeah.
And that will happen occasionally.
Mhm.
But as I said, local business run by local people for a local community, and you're seeing more and more of that. Luke, I don't know whether you noticed that. And if I look at my own village, Western Turville in Buckinghamshire, they've just put in a cafe into the playing field. So that's completely new. It will be a community cafe. There's been a new one put down in Wendover. More around the sort of the suburb area of it. So there's more and more community pieces now where local people are meeting together, which is great. And that's an opportunity. Certainly,
Yeah.
community is an opportunity.
And I think it's an interest. I wonder if it's come out of the back of COVID, where people have kind of missed that community feel and they kind of want to experience that a bit more. Maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but I think it's something that you're seeing a lot more pop up in a lot of different places these days. And I think maybe the coffee consumers becoming a little bit more educated, know what they want. They want something that's served by someone they know with a smile, rather than kind of a bit of a cold, emotionless experience that you might get when you're getting shouted at Pret at lunchtime and there's 20 people, waiting, and it's like, okay, thanks for my coffee, but I'm not feeling great about that experience. So, yeah, it's interesting.
I think it is an opportunity for coffee shop owners because more and more people are working at home. They don't want to sit in their home 24/7. They'd like sometimes to change of environment, get out for a walk, go and have a coffee, either as a break or actually I go and take my laptop down and do a couple of hours work, in a coffee shop. It's commonplace nowadays, and it is an opportunity definitely for independent coffee owners to really reach out to more people than they would have done in the past, which probably would,
Yeah.
or, it would have been, you know, mothers with children, and that, I mean, that's still important, by the way, or weekend people who are
Cyclists and things like that that are kind of passers by. But yeah, it's interesting because it's like a different cohort of people, and there's more people work from home. They want to come in, like you say, if you're going in there and you're a cyclist on the weekend and you're popping in for a cake and a coffee, versus if you want to go and sit somewhere for a couple of hours, have a few coffees and work. That's a bit of a different sort of vibe that you're going to want to offer with your shop. So yeah, it's definitely worth bearing that in mind as well, because that's a bit of a sort of moving trend with those type of shops that'll be popping up.
interesting one. It depends how many covers, as they call it, to you and I, seats. How many seats have you got? And one of the things you potentially don't want is if you've got 20 seats and you've got 18 people who are sitting there having one coffee every hour on their laptops using your Wi-Fi and using your electricity. So it is a fine balance there, but actually it's much better to have 18 people sitting on a seat having a coffee every hour than nobody.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, my view is I'd rather have, 20 bums on seats all eating and all drinking, and they come in quickly and they leave quickly and another one comes in. That's your
That's ideal, and that's the rush. But if you're on the coffee machine, that's not ideal because you're having to move very quickly. But it's great for the cash machine, so that's all good. Um, Amazing. No, thanks, Bob. And if so, for anyone that has got the dream of, I would love to start a coffee shop one day, and I love going to my local coffee shop, but this would be an amazing business, etc., etc. We've touched upon a few different things there with kind of running the numbers, etc. But if there was anything, bit of advice you'd give someone before they were gonna, sort of going into that with their eyes open, what would you say?
Yeah. I mean, my top tips would be, first of all, do your research. Where is it? What's the people around it? Take a good feel of the place before you buy it. Definitely know what you're getting into, financially, people wise. Think down to the lease, even the lease. No good buying a coffee shop that's got a 1 year lease.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you could find that the landlord's kicking you out, or the landlord's decided to up the rent by a huge amount of money. So definitely know what you're getting into. I keep saying, go back to this quality coffee. Unbelievably important. Wages and waste. Told you that's really, really good to think of. Your staff, make sure they're high quality, customer focused, and you train them. Build up a loyal customer base, and then last thing, which sounds dull but it's important, is hygiene. The whole hygiene of a cafe is really, really important. You can be shut down quite easily if you're not on top of your hygiene, which includes training people, it includes labeling food, drink, etc., etc. So there is a lot behind it. So back to that, do your research and know what you're getting into.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's more like running a restaurant than running a lifestyle business, really, in the sense of you've got to be quite kind of militant in those sort of hard and fast rules, hygiene, waste, minimizing waste, which like it sounds like is much easier to do with coffee than food, in that you've got a predetermined dosage of your coffee. If your baristas are good, they're not going to be wasting too much milk. So that's maybe would you say that's slightly easier to manage with the coffee than the food?
So absolutely, I mean, but we weren't a coffee cart, we were a cafe.
Yeah.
So yeah, coffee is probably one of your easiest bits once you've got the people trained, and they know what they're doing. As long as they're consistent, then easy days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paired with food, which is a different ball game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, yeah, it's something that's worth, you see a few kind of these coffee carts pop up on Instagram and they're just offering coffee and they might not even really offer any food at all. And I suppose for someone wanting to get into and they're purely focused on coffee, that's maybe a route they might want to go down, versus a cafe is almost like you treating it more like a restaurant, in the sense of it's food focused. Coffee is obviously a big part of it, but the food is a bigger element of that business, I suppose, from what you were doing. And
Yeah,
sounds like more of a headache, to be honest. But
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, I mean, it's way bigger than just a coffee cart.
yeah,
100%. Don't
absolutely.
get me wrong, I know a lot of coffee carts, and they're not easy work because again you've got to have them manned, and you've got to have again everything in place. And I might be wrong. I would find it very difficult, profit margin on coffee compared with profit margin on food. You'd have to sell one hell of a lot of cups of coffee to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's what I would say, particularly if you're hiring a lot of.
No, it's a good point, and it's not like I say the margins are paper thin on something like that, and I think as much as the food and the wastage element might be sort of the more tricky thing to manage, that's ultimately where your profit is. So it's kind of you need to manage that as well as a business, take an overall view of it. You want to provide quick takeaway coffee for people that want it, so they're your loyal base. But then if you've got people that are sitting down having an hour in the cafe and they're bum on seat, etc., and they're ordering food, might be tricky, but ultimately, if that's where the profit lies, then that's what you have to do, and that's the whole balancing act, I suppose, like you mentioned. So, sounds it's more like juggling plates than anything else, spinning plates and juggling as opposed to just swanning about. I'll have a coffee here, a coffee there. It's really not that easy by the sounds of it.
No. I mean, if you wanted a tip on coffee, always sell large coffee as opposed
Okay.
to small coffee because obviously it's only water.
Yeah, water and a bit of milk maybe, and yeah, that's right. That's a good point.
There you go.
Um,
That's what I would say. Encourage
Always
everyone to have a
always
large
upsell
cup.
the large coffee, definitely. Yeah, no, good stuff. Last question, Bob, just one off the cuff. How do you take your coffee in the morning?
How do I take my coffee in the morning? Great question. I'm a latte person. Double shot latte, always large because I like lots of it. And I like a strong blend.
Okay.
Uh, so the coffee shop I go to nowadays does offer two blends, and I think that's a nice move.
Mm,
Um, so a smooth blend and a strong blend. So I'm a you know two shot strong blend latte, please.
lovely. Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Bob. I really appreciate your time, and it's been great talking to you, and we will catch up again soon, I'm sure.
Always been a pleasure, and wish everybody every success. Whether they're drinking good cups of coffee or they're deciding they want to get into a coffee shop. So good luck, everyone. Enjoy the experience.
Great. Thanks a lot,
Yeah.
Bob. All the
See
best.
you.
Cheers,
All the
Bob.
best.
Cheers.
Bye.